When we talk about prison escape, we usually think of Hollywood movies like The Rock, The Shawshank Redemption, Escape from Alcatraz, and many others. But what you may not know is that many of these famous prison escape scenes actually happened in real life, inside a prison near San Francisco in the United States. The movies mentioned above were inspired by this real place, a prison called Alcatraz. Even though we have seen many prison escape stories in films, real life is often more shocking than movies. Today, we will recreate the real prison escape event of Alcatraz. At that time, Alcatraz was known as the Island of Death. A prisoner who was locked there for 10 years once said that Alcatraz was not built just to hold people, but to punish them. This happened during 1933, when the United States was facing the worst economic depression in its history. Over a period of 10 years, nearly 13 million people lost their jobs, and more than 5,000 banks were shut down. Because of this, crime increased rapidly. Gangsters controlled entire cities, criminals robbed banks across the country, and even prisoners started bribing guards. Everyone was trying to escape from prison. Faced with this uncontrollable situation, the head of the FBI decided to build a special prison to completely isolate dangerous criminals. This decision led to the birth of Alcatraz. Alcatraz was originally called Pelican Island and was first used as a military base. It was officially converted into a federal prison in 1934. During the 30 years it operated before closing, it held more than 100 of the most dangerous criminals in America. Among them were famous figures like mafia boss Al Capone, machine gun killer George Kelly, and Robert Stroud, known as the Birdman of Alcatraz. It is also said that Chinese scientist Chen Shuisun was once unfairly detained here. So why were these dangerous criminals kept in this prison? What made Alcatraz so special? If we imagine draining the seawater around the island, we would see that Alcatraz is actually a huge rock rising from the sea, surrounded by steep cliffs on all sides. The island covers an area of about 76,000 square meters, roughly the size of 10 football fields. It is located less than 2 miles from San Francisco's Fisherman's Wharf. However, the surrounding sea is extremely deep, with an average water temperature of only 12 degrees Celsius. The freezing water is also home to aggressive sharks. This natural environment formed a powerful barrier. On top of that, inside the prison, there was one guard for every 3 prisoners, and the number of guards was 4 times higher than in normal prisons. The island was surrounded by 6 guard posts operating 24 hours a day. Each prisoner was kept alone in a cell measuring only 3 square meters. The cells were made entirely of steel, with no privacy at all. Once inside, escaping seemed impossible. Because of this, Alcatraz was once called the most secure prison in the world. Prisoners lived for years in tiny cells, while outside their windows they could see the bright and busy city of San Francisco. This contrast was both painful and cruel. So, did anyone ever try to escape from Alcatraz? Yes, they did. According to official Alcatraz records, there were 14 escape attempts involving 36 prisoners. Among them, 23 were caught, 6 were shot and killed, 2 drowned, and 5 went missing. The authorities claimed that those 5 prisoners were swallowed by the sea. However, many believe that 3 of them may have successfully escaped. To this day, no one knows what really happened to them. So how did anyone manage to escape such a heavily guarded prison? Alcatraz was believed to be impossible to escape from, but 3 brilliant prisoners broke this myth. They were Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. First, let us get to know these 3 prisoners. Frank Morris started committing crimes when he was only 13 years old. You can say that almost his entire life was spent inside prisons. According to records, his IQ was 133, which means he was very intelligent. The Anglin brothers grew up together since childhood. Once, they robbed a local bank using a toy gun. After going to prison, the 2 brothers escaped many times from different prisons. Finally, the authorities could not control them anymore, so they were transferred to Alcatraz prison. Morris likely noticed their rich experience in escaping from prisons. That is why he chose the Anglin brothers to plan an escape together. So how did they successfully escape? On the night of June 11, 1962, the 3 men used spoons to dig through the ventilation opening near the toilet in their cells. They placed handmade fake heads on their beds to fool the guards during night checks. After that, they crawled out through the ventilation hole, climbed up the ventilation pipes, and reached the public corridor on the 3rd floor. Then they broke through the ceiling vent, ran across the prison rooftop, and slid down a kitchen pipe that was 4 floors high. Avoiding the watchtowers, they moved toward the shore. Using a handmade air pump made from an accordion tool, they inflated a homemade raft. Finally, they slid into the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay and disappeared into the darkness of the night. To this day, no one knows where they went. Now, some people may wonder how such thick concrete walls could be dug using spoons, and where did they get the materials to make the raft? Alcatraz is surrounded by water and looks impossible to escape from. However, the prison's concrete structure was actually its biggest weakness. The building was constantly exposed to seawater and salty air. Over time, the salt caused serious damage to the walls. Also, the prison toilets used seawater for drainage. Because of the salt, the drainage pipes aged quickly, and seawater seeped into the walls, making them even weaker. This type of concrete could be easily broken using simple metal tools. The three men took advantage of this weakness. They modified stolen spoons, coins, and nail clippers. After almost 1 year of work, they finally dug through the ventilation opening. So why did the guards not notice anything? It turned out that every night from 6 to 7, prisoners were allowed to relax and play music. During this 1 hour, the prison was extremely noisy. This created the perfect cover for their digging work. They used newspapers to create fake ventilation covers and colored them with soap. Then they collected hair from the prison barbershop and glued it together to make fake human heads. This trick successfully fooled everyone. But where did they get the materials to make the inflatable raft? The prison also had a factory that made shoes and gloves for the United States military. Raincoats and glue were easily available there. That explains how they managed to collect these materials. However, joining 50 raincoats together was not an easy task. It was impossible to do this secretly inside a cell alone. This is where another man became important. His name was Alan West, a mechanical expert. In fact, he was the one who first started the escape plan. West requested permission to clean and paint the top floor during the daytime. Surprisingly, the guards agreed. That area was the only exit leading to the rooftop. Above the opening was a ventilation structure that held support equipment. Because this place was mostly ignored, the guards became careless. As a result, every night, the four men quietly escaped from their cells and climbed up to that spot. Using raincoats and glue, they successfully made an inflatable raft that was 1.8 meters wide and 4.2 meters long. Not only that, they also created a periscope, drills, paddles, life jackets, and even tools like wrenches. These were very advanced tools for a prison escape, but unfortunately, just when the four men planned to escape together, a problem occurred in West's cell. The ventilation opening in his cell stopped working properly. The night before the escape, he noticed that the hole had become too large. He was afraid the guards would notice it, so he added another layer of paint around the edges to hide it. However, when the escape night arrived, he discovered that the hole had hardened and was sealed shut. After struggling for a long time, he finally managed to crawl out of his cell, but by then, the other three men had already left. In the end, West had no choice but to return to his cell and give up. The next day, during the investigation, West was caught by the guards. It was from his confession that the authorities learned about this carefully planned escape. Now, even after 60 years, no one knows whether the three prisoners successfully reached land or died in the ocean. This question remains a mystery. To solve this mystery, a team of 3 Dutch scientists decided to recreate the escape. They built a similar inflatable raft and tested the escape themselves. The Alcatraz escape became the longest unsolved mystery in American history. 3 prisoners escaped from the highest security prison in the world and disappeared into the ocean using a homemade raincoat raft. After that night, they were never seen again. Did they die in the sea, or did they survive and escape successfully? Even after 60 years, this question still has no clear answer. To uncover the truth, the 3 Dutch scientists decided to personally test the escape route. First, they conducted extensive research on the water currents of San Francisco Bay as they existed at that time. Using hydrodynamic software, they created a detailed water flow model. The moving arrows in the model showed the direction of the water currents. Alcatraz Island was located right in the middle of these strong currents. Then, using old tidal charts, they built a 3-dimensional model to simulate the escape route of the 3 prisoners. Their research revealed that the most likely place the prisoners could have reached was an area called Marin Bay. Why this location? By looking at the map, we can see that there were 4 possible routes from Alcatraz. The prisoners could either reach the nearby San Francisco mainland or Angel Island, or they could follow the ocean currents toward the Golden Gate Bridge or land near Marin Bay. However, the first 3 routes were almost impossible. According to the powerful ocean currents around Alcatraz, the prisoners would eventually be pulled into the Pacific Ocean near the Golden Gate Bridge. In that case, death would be certain. Therefore, if they wanted to survive, landing at Marin Bay was the only possible option. But reaching that place was not easy. Timing was extremely important. The prisoners began their escape between 11:20 at night and 12 o'clock. At that time, the ocean currents were relatively calm, but understanding the currents was not enough. To accurately recreate the escape, the scientists also needed to build a similar inflatable valve. To stay true to the original materials, the 3 scientists examined items left behind by prisoners at the prison. What surprised them was that the escapees had created more than 80 different tools. This showed how carefully planned the escape truly was. After comparing materials, the scientists found a base coating similar to the original one used back then, as well as a special adhesive glue for stitching. After cutting and sewing 50 raincoats together, they finally completed the inflatable raft valve. At last, it was time for the real-life experiment. The 3 scientists divided their work clearly. One person was responsible for rowing the boat, while the the other two were in charge of inflating and managing the raft. In this way, they started moving in the planned direction. At the beginning, everything went smoothly as they followed the ocean current. There was no problem at first, but after 50 minutes, just like the simulation predicted, they hit a powerful wall of ocean current. The strong waves made it impossible for them to control the direction of the boat. At this point, they were getting closer and closer to the Golden Gate Bridge. If they did not change direction in time, they would most likely drift into the Pacific Ocean. But rowing with only one person was completely useless against such strong currents. After traveling for 70 minutes, all three scientists were completely exhausted. At the same time, the raft started sinking deeper into the water. Even though the destination was very close, they had no choice but to give up and focus on safety. At first glance, it looked like the experiment had failed, but I do not think so. Why? First, the true power of ocean currents cannot be fully measured by data alone. The ocean conditions during the experiment were different from those on the night of the real prison escape. If they had rowed slightly toward the north at the beginning, toward the upper side of Horseshoe Bay, the result might have been very different. Second, during the entire experiment, only one person was rowing. The strength of a single person is simply not enough to fight against strong ocean currents. Most importantly, they were not actually escaping for their lives. Without real fear, survival instinct, and belief, reaching close to the destination was already an impressive result. Just based on this, we have enough reason to believe that the real escapees had a strong chance of reaching land successfully. However, one question still remains. Why has no one ever found any trace of the three prisoners until today? After the escape, the police searched the area for 10 days, but they did not find the three prisoners. The only thing discovered was a photograph left behind by them. This raises another question. Why would something as valuable as a photograph be left behind so easily? Did they really die in the ocean? Or did they leave it behind on purpose to confuse the police? What do you think? Less than 1 year after the escape, the prison was shut down because the cost of operation and maintenance was too high. Today, Alcatraz Island has become a famous tourist attraction in San Francisco. If you ever get the chance, you can visit it yourself.